All right. Well, welcome back to the podcast. This is an interview of the depths of healthcare. Today we have Dr. Bilal Ahmed, an interventional cardiologist and a co-founder. Really unique experience. What stood out to me is that he's building in a space that a lot of people talk about, but not many people really approach it with the scientific rigor or ethical conviction that he has approached it with. Bilal, welcome. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Ben. It's a pleasure to be on. We had a
Yeah.
great conversation before this, and looking forward to another one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really excited to kind of honestly just to highlight you for the people and my listeners just because of our last conversation. Before we get into the actual Lila itself, why don't you give people like just a little bit more background than I just did?
Yeah, absolutely. So, by trade, I'm an interventional and structural cardiologist. For the non-medical folks, that means I open up arteries or blocked arteries in heart attacks and outside of heart attacks, and then I replace and repair valves without having to crack open the chest.
So obviously your path in medicine at this point has, what I assume is just you went all through schooling. It was interventional cardiology until proven otherwise. When did things
Yeah.
We can talk about that bridge now, but that's not the typical founder background people imagine when they think of like
Right.
consumer health brands. So
Yeah,
how did that
absolutely. No,
path start to shift? I guess we can go there now.
yeah, I mean, that started to shift pretty late in the game. I'd say, roughly 3 years ago. Before that, the whole concept that kind of uh, acted as the seeds, as you will, before I even knew that I wanted to do anything entrepreneurial. Uh, Way back when, before or right after college and before med school, I went to UAB in Birmingham, Alabama, and they didn't have an MD MBA program. Obama had gotten elected recently, and I heard like all this chatter back and forth about Obamacare, and oh my God, things are going to change so much. I was like, let me get an MBA,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and so I got an MBA in that year between college and med school to try to understand the jargon with a focus on ultimately being in medicine and applying it to private practice. To be quite and then fast forward, to 2017, I'm an intern over at Brown in Rhode Island, and I basically met a few great folks who were co-trainees, and we started to kind of investigate different things or different ways that we could do research that was novel. And one of the things that we settled on was the gut microbiome. It was kind of just becoming recognized. And to give a little bit of background, in 2013, there was this landmark trial in the New England Journal of Medicine for this infection that it's called C. diff or Clostridium difficile that can be really hard to treat with antibiotics. And so a large portion of people will fail antibiotics. They found that you take healthy people's poop, you put it in a capsule, and you have people with C. diff infection take it. And there's greater than a 90% cure rate. Yeah, I think even greater than 95%, if I'm remembering correctly. So this concept plus the concept of in the late 90s they had tried this trial. It was actually a New England Journal also. They tried antibiotics for coronary disease, and it was a negative trial. They tried azithromycin. Uh,
Oh my
it's like
gosh.
one of the like Timmy like 800 trials or whatever.
They're like, okay, cut this off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like there was some, background there, and there were some Eastern European studies that showed basically plaque biopsy and
Hmm.
big arteries leading to the brain, leading to the legs. They found that there were multi-drug resistant bacteria that were growing biofilms, or basically physical barriers to antibiotic entry. So we thought there's got to be a link somewhere, between the gut microbiome and coronary disease. So we actually started this study, prospective study, got the funding for it. I did rectal swabs to do what's called 16S sequencing, or basically, looking what kind of bacteria grew and in what diversity, and then doing metabolomics work or seeing what kind of chemicals they made and what those chemicals potentially could do to the human body. We were 3 patients shy of completing enrollment when COVID hit, and all funding got redirected to more noble causes. But the idea stuck, and it was one of those things that kept me up at night. And
Yeah.
3-ish years ago, my middle sister actually, was in New York City finishing up culinary school at the Institute for Culinary Education. It's like a James Beard Foundation culinary school. And she was like, I want to bring Pakistani heritage, or basically where our parents and grandparents are from, to the US. And I want to, specifically bring this drink, mango lassi. It's like a shake that people may have tried, but you go to South Asian restaurants in the US, and it's like oily food, really, really oily food. For us, having gone every year and knowing that, but knowing what it's like actually
Right.
overseas,
Right.
grandma had a mango tree in her front yard and she would make mango lassi and it was really light, it was very refreshing. And the
Yeah.
benefit was it's yogurt based and it's heavy in probiotics already or bacteria that are beneficial. So she was like, you know, well, I want to start a business. I want to bottle mango lassi and sell it. You're the only one in the family who has an MBA. Can you help me? And I was like, first of all, I don't remember anything from the MBA. Second of all, why don't we take the passion project and put the two together? You know, I'll work on, formulating based on the evidence, a gut microbiome kind of therapeutic supplement, and you flavor it with, mangoes. They're called chansa mangoes. They're the most kind of elite and sought after mangoes in Pakistan.
Is that
So
really? Wow.
yeah, they're CHAUNSA. So we
Okay.
get them directly from Pakistan, and it's not artificial flavoring; it's actual chansa mangoes that
Wow.
flavor it. So that's the medium version of how we got here. It was
That's
complete
unique.
accidents.
I mean, I just like that she came after you of like, "Hey, you have 3 letters behind your name that could help me." And you're like, "Yeah,
Right?
you think I remember what to do with that?"
Yeah, I just like all out of my mind at this point. I don't even remember the jargon. I haven't applied it.
Right.
Starting
Exactly.
fresh.
I mean, when did it I mean, obviously, so this has been very intellectually interesting or something that's a passion project for you for many years now, and we're coming up on almost a decade of you at least initiating the research
Yeah.
back in residency, but when did it go from something like that to something you actually were like, was it the passion project combining with your sister's idea where it started to get traction of what you've had something to actually build around?
Yeah, from a entrepreneurial aspect, that was definitely the tipping point. Was literally her picking up a phone and calling me and saying, "Hey, help me out." And then me having a light bulb go off and go like, "Hey, we could make this into something else that satisfies both of us." But the idea itself, when I got to cardiology fellowship, I pitched it to a bunch of research mentors, and they were like, "We're interested, but we're more interested in this AI assisted echo study." You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So I didn't have the funding that I would have liked because I really wanted to do like a large scale study. And at that time, the analytics for, like chime analysis, for example, for it's like, a statistical method that's used, the software was just insanely expensive. And the throughput for doing any kind of, microbiome analysis was insane. And you also had to use AI models because there are way too many kind of permutations for any group of humans to calculate in a lifetime. So
Right.
AI
Right.
wasn't strong enough at that point. It was a lot of barriers in terms of getting it off the ground. So the idea stuck. It was actually one of my
Yeah.
talk. We had this yearly talk in cardiology fellowship. All 3 years was about inflammation, and the last year was about the gut microbiome and how there's emerging evidence that it actually plays a large role in the whole spectrum of cardiovascular disease. So it was always there.
Yeah, and you're like, "Finally." Like, "Yes, I know that this has been here." I do think we're lagging in this area, so it's really cool to kinda see you take that by the grab it by the horns, for lack of a better term, and, really run with it. Because, I mean, there's also you're walking into this world now where it's kind of an identity crisis. Not not crisis. Crisis is a large word, but, uh, you know, you see yourself as a physician who started a company or as an entrepreneur who happens to be a physician. There's the tension pulling both ways because you're active in both parts, and they're very different in how you kind of lead and how you run your day and how you schedule yourself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Talk about
Amen.
that a little bit.
I mean, there's so many aspects. I'll kind of,
High
try to pare
level.
it down as much as I can, high level.
Yeah,
The workflow looks different. Uh,
totally.
I thought I'd be great as a work from home guy. I am not. I get cabin fever like nobody's business. And yeah, so that's one thing. The second thing is I have found that telling people on the business side that I want things to run like they do in the cath lab, kind of like orderly chaos. It doesn't work. People don't respond to that and they don't have the same. I hesitate to use the word work ethic, but I can't think of a better way to put it. They don't have the same dedication it's a 9 to 5, right? With weekends off. So I'm like reaching out on weekends. Our COO, I'll give an example and then I'll end it. He was like, well, you cannot send an email at 10 p.m., at midnight, at 2 a.m. and then expect people to respond. Like that seems manic. You gotta stop. And I was like, okay, fair. I'll pinky promise I won't do it again. But
Then
like,
I will schedule send it because I need to send it then.
exactly. But like after a long day of work before, because very recently went part time for clinical work. For a long time, I was doing this literally in
But
the
yeah,
evening hours, so I had no other choice. It turns out people don't run that way on the business side.
business side's a weird world. But then you have some people who are like up late into the night emailing and doing their work. You get responses at like 10:30 and you're like, "Well, wait, hey, like here's an example."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lot of differences.
You
Cognitive
know,
dis
very, very different, and you probably feel that tension pulling you in multiple directions. It's probably a better fit now to kind of move into that part-time, day shift almost, kind of just working just to so you can have a little bit more headspace to balance.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was getting no time with my kid, with my wife, and it's a little bit more siloed now. Like you said, this headspace wise, I can kind of focus on them when time comes.
Gotta set good boundaries. That's like
Yeah,
the toughest thing for business owners and startups to do.
yeah. It's already tough as you know, being in the healthcare field, but you add another layer and it gets tougher.
Oh, yeah. What do you think working with your sister, how's that dynamic looked? How did her perspective help shape, kind of direction? Obviously, she's got a lot of skills in the culinary arts and she had the initial kind of dream. How have you guys kind of found a good way to kind of mold your visions together in kind of building this?
Yeah, so it helped that we always liked each other. We she
Yeah,
calls me
good
her like
point.
baby best friend.
Yeah.
She's 5 years younger than me. We were always really tight knit,
Yeah, yeah,
and she would kind of look to me as like in between dad and brother. You know what I mean? Kind of that sort of relationship.
yeah.
So there was that trust. Uh, but to be frank, early on, it was a lot of kind of coloring outside the lines. Where does the sibling relationship stop and where does the corporate relationship, for lack of better words, start? And so, thankfully, we recognized that early on. And so we made a pact. We were like, business time is business time. We're going to have like meeting minutes. We're going to, talk about this and like we would in a boardroom and basically forget that we're brother, sister. And then after that, we can, joke and, make fun of each other and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it works out really well because I was like, I don't care about the branding. I don't care about the flavor. I don't care about the box. I
I'm
care
all
about the
about the
science.
science.
All about the science, right? Stereotypical. And she was like, no, I like this box. And people have loved the box. And she was like, no, I like this flavor. People have loved the flavor. So like from a design element,
Sure.
the creative side, she
Yeah.
brings those juices where I have none. Like it's
Yeah.
like very kind of like cut and dry for me.
You're like, "It doesn't matter to me. Like, it's gonna sell because it's effective, because the science says so."
Yeah, right. And that's not the case, it turns out, in business.
Gotta have a good marketer or a good kinda, like, different set of eyes on that. That's really cool to hear. I'm glad you guys have set those boundaries because that can be also kind of, you know it can go places you don't want it to go is the best thing I guess I can put that way. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
but what do you I mean, what do you think, like, obviously so we know the why behind why you're building kind of in this microbiome space because it connects with cardiovascular disease. But why the supplement space specifically? Do you think this is the best way to address it from your perspective?
I think right now it is, and there are a few reasons for that. So the natural question is, if this was so effective and the science is so great, why is it not in the pharmaceutical space? Very
Yeah.
valid question.
Yeah, yeah.
Two reasons. One, for now, at least, and for the foreseeable future, hopefully, you can't patent bacteria. So you can't patent probiotics. So there's nothing in it for a pharmaceutical company. And then in terms of the metabolites or the actual downstream chemicals that, the bacteria make that are either helpful health wise or harmful health wise, from the helpful standpoint, pharma is actively working on it, but has not successfully isolated a compound that can then be turned into a drug. Like if you look at the R&D cycle for a pharma company, it's like on the order of like a decade plus before a drug hits the market and hits not even hits the market, hits like phase one, phase two trials.
Right.
Uh, so all that is to say, it's coming. I firmly believe it's coming in the pharma space.
I
It
see.
just hasn't been around long enough. Give some framework. The NIH or the National Institute of Health started the Human Microbiome Project. It was a 10-year project to basically just characterize what a normal spectrum of the gut microbiome looks like. It
Hmm.
took 10 years for them to gather enough data. Even that wasn't enough, and it stopped maybe 5 to 7 years ago. And so, like, we just gathered information, and that was just in the US, so, like, it hasn't been reproduced globally, for example. Like, in Africa, we have no clue what people's gut microbiome looks like.
It's going to be so different in these different countries, these different areas. I mean, especially, oh man, I mean, I see what you're saying now. Like, this is really cool to highlight that the fact that we're still so early on, like, there's still so much unknown. It's scary, but also kind of exciting at the same time. I'm sure that's how you're kind of approaching it because there's so much unknown, but where our tech is advancing so quickly, like you're saying, the sequencing algorithms that are being able to be done via AI, which is able to condense the stuff that our brains can't handle quickly. I mean, this stuff is really advancing so quickly, and it's really exciting to see that we're kind of on the precipice of something like this.
Yeah. No, it really is.
Talk a little bit about you know, what you were seeing in the supplement space that frustrated you enough to say, I think this needs to be done differently.
Yeah, so, it kinda crept up on me because I wasn't a big supplement guy, but I got forced into it by being in this space. I started looking around, and I looked at all these really well-designed websites, really, kind of popular supplements. No
Yeah.
companies will be named, but,
Yep.
when you look at their claims, a solid chunk, more than half, had like tiny font, like 100 font sizes smaller with an asterisk, like, here's our science. And then I Google it or I PubMed it, basically a search for all the index, like medical literature for people who don't know. Uh, and I found nothing, or essentially what I would find is links to that company's PR releases. And then the company, so there's no real like index science in a reputable journal. But then I'd find a smaller chunk of companies that had studies, but those studies were looking at kind of surrogate outcomes or what we in science will consider outcomes that don't really prove the point, but they prove like an intermediary that kind of shows the point, but doesn't really show proof in the pudding. What I mean by that is, for example,
Yeah.
like digestive health. A lot of the companies that actually have studies that you can find, they're looking at like self-reported 9-point questionnaires from patients about like stool caliber, how regular they are. Like it's not really addressing any disease state or pathology. You have no like lab tests, like imaging, like for example,
Right.
it's really kind of a subjective scale that is useful, to some degree, but by definition, inherently, it's a weaker endpoint. It's a lower bar to meet, and meeting that lower bar is not as exciting to me. It doesn't not as robust. Uh, so, for example, like one of the things that I'm really proud of that I think does differentiate Lila is we've we're based on 13 randomized control trials for the cholesterol aspect. We're cholesterol lowering is a biomarker. It's a lab test that you can measure and quantify. It's not a subjective symptom scale. You can show that after 3 months, the LDL goes down by 15 to up to 24%, depending on which of those randomized control trials you look at. I mean, they're smaller studies because these studies by definition are usually smaller, from the supplement space, but they're randomized control trials and they've got harder endpoints that you can measure and quantify.
Right.
Uh, so a lot of snake oil, a lot of paid marketing. There's a company that won't be named that for every influencer, they get the exact amount that someone would pay for a month of their product, and then they get half of that as a kickback every month for promoting it. There's another company that won't be named that has a university, for basically for influencers, and they've
Wow.
got this little contract, and at the end of it, it says, We want to be, diligent about the science and approach this ethically. So you have to take all these modules and get 100 on the test. But you can take the test as many times as you want. And if you keep running into issues, we'll assign you a study buddy to make sure you get 100. Like it's like plainly written on the website. And I'm like, come on, guys, this is insane. Like these
Ridiculous.
aren't people who believe in it. You're basically like telling people like, hey, like, cheat on the test and
Yeah.
then go out there and promote the product.
Yeah. That that's man, the ethics behind all this is what really kicks. I mean, I think that's probably what you've seen as well and what really grinds your gears. Because
Absolutely.
it from my perspective, I mean, it seems like you're trying to hold Lila to the standard, when it comes to claims and evidence and credibility. That way you can communicate real science to everyday consumers without, you know, you don't want to just marketing fluff it. I mean, because that's a temptation, right? That's what everybody else has done leading up to now, in a sense, the people that you're highlighting. But you don't want to oversimplify it because you want to be like, hey guys, there's a very specific reason why I came up with this idea, right? And it's like, how do you find that middle ground to communicate that? Because to be fair, and we talked about this a little bit on our previous call, but aggressive claims could probably accelerate your growth, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
But how do you draw that line? I guess this can be a challenging question, but how do you draw that line between really effective marketing and compromising your own integrity?
I may have to come back to you once I figured out the answer, but I'll tell you some pain points. So
Sure.
the marketing agency every, not even months, every few weeks, they come to me and say, "Hey, we chat GPT this or we like Gemini this or whatever."
Yeah.
And there's some association with like X benefit, like, brighter skin, better mood, all this kind of stuff. And each time I have to push back and I have to say, if there's not a certain level of evidence, I don't want it on the box or in any kind of like media outlet. And they keep telling me the exact same thing that you just said, that, making these kind of claims that are, uh, associated but not proven to the same degree
Right.
would really help us, make our jobs easier. You're making it really hard for us. But there's that ethics that comes with it. Like I can't say that I'm doing this in an ethical way and I'm trying to, raise the bar or demand more from have you demand as a consumer more from your supplements and position myself as like the anti Dr. Oz and also take this route. In my mind, it may be too rigid of a moral approach, but it just feels dirty. So
Yeah.
I
No.
haven't figured it out, but there's
You're
gotta be a
more
balance.
watch this space is more what it's about, you
Yeah,
know. And
fair.
maybe we'll just continue to keep an eye on your marketing as it continues to grow and we'll reach out if we're concerned.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, keep me in check. That's what I want.
But, obviously, so for the listeners, I think, they don't know that how much of this you've kind of bootstrapped yourself, right? And really kind of done a majority of this on your own. Some really amazing opportunities that have come up on the marketing side and that kind of thing. But you've been pretty clear with me and, that you don't want the outside equity kind of shaping the vision too early, even if it's so tempting because the plane is hard to lift off without enough fuel. But why do you find that to be so important?
Yeah, a few reasons. One is complete selfishness. This was my baby.
Yep.
I formulated it. I
Okay.
want it to be mine. There's a practical aspect to that, even though it comes from a selfish place. Uh, Kind of to your last point, I want this to be presented in a certain way that has certain standards. And if I take outside money, which has been offered, three, four, five times, three times from the same guy, for example, there's the very real potential that outside people come in and they say, hey, at the end of the day, a business exists to make money. And so we should take these approaches that I previously said no to, that I found kind of squirrely,
Yeah.
to accelerate the product because it's in their best interest to make that equity pop immediately or kind of as quickly as possible. So the only answer left is bootstrap, get a loan, which comes with its own issues with interest. So bootstrap it is.
Yep. Yep. I mean, that's cool that you're kind of like protecting that. You say selfish, I hear I want to stick within my moral boundaries. And so like I hear integrity there, not selfishness. But I,
Yeah,
I
no,
get what you're saying.
the yeah, my name on the patent, but no, you're absolutely right. It comes from that same space. Like it's like the Hippocratic Oath, but applied to business.
Yeah. And you're kind of even talking about this already. Like everybody in the world and everybody that we're surrounded by, definitely in the Western culture as well, is the fact that everyone's, how are you growing? How are you scaling? How are you doing this and X, Y, and Z, right? And especially if you're on like LinkedIn or the social media, is like everybody's like, how are you building? And then the algorithms find you and they surround you with more chatter. And you're
Oh
like,
yeah,
I'm not scaling. But not many people talk about that ethical side of growing. What's that kind of tension look like in your experience so far? And kind of how has that warred within you a little bit?
yeah. I mean, to me, it's pretty clear. Like I'm not trying to say I'm holier than thou or any kind of like saint or anything. Like I'm a regular dude, just like everybody else. But like uh, to your question earlier, like it was rhetorical, but doctor first or entrepreneur second. I firmly see myself as physician first,
Mm,
entrepreneur second. And that has to mean something. Like if you're gonna have standards, you got to kind of stick by them when it's hard and when it's not hard. So within myself, it's been fine. Like I'm okay paying more for something that has, or like decreasing my margins for something that has evidence behind it compared to
right,
another probiotic that another company is using that has lesser data, for example.
right,
It's been hard convincing the team, and the team has shrunk as a consequence. And I couldn't be happier because the people who are left are bare bones in terms of a lean operation, and they firmly believe in it. Like our COO is taking a massive pay cut. Like he's was getting six figures at his last job. I won't even talk about what he's getting now, but it's like pennies on the dollar.
right,
He's got skin in the game, and he's got skin in the game because he believes in it. Yeah, he's like,
right.
I really like this approach. In terms of operations, it's been hard because the marketing, all that stuff that I've talked about. But internally, it's always been kind of clear to me that like I started this from a research perspective. It's now ended up as an entrepreneurial kind of effort, but I still have that research mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, you're coming into a supplement company or building a supplement kind of brand in a sense, and it's scientific perspective. That's what you want your foundation to be, and you want to build off of that. And so it's like, how do I kind of moderate that ethical cost of growing without overstretching, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
That is a tension.
what do you feel? I mean, so this is kind of a different stepping outside the current line of thinking, but if someone is building, let's say your neighbor down the street, he's another physician that you work with or something like that, and he's building a science-backed health company today. What are some like of the hard-earned lessons that you've already kind of touched on, but the hard-earned lessons that you wish you'd want them to know earlier?
Yeah, I think this I can certainly talk about the doctor down the street, but I think in general for any entrepreneur starting off, uh, don't bite off more than you can chew in terms of your team. I made
Mm,
that mistake personally, so I can say that from experience.
yeah.
At the very outset, I was like, I'm not an accounting expert, I'm not a finance expert, I'm not a marketing expert, I'm not a social media expert. So I had four employees plus some extra, but four employees that were unnecessary, basically. It was stuff that I could have and since then have taught myself, to a degree that it works and I don't need someone like that. And so there was a lot of bloat. I was paying a lot. Thankfully, it was just on a whim. I was like, we should probably have a lawyer on like retainer with like a promise of, hey, if you do a really good job for us for cheap, then you may have a board seat one day. He's actually a 30-year veteran from Goldman Sachs. He made a bunch of money in the 80s and 90s during the mergers and acquisitions boom, and now lives
Yeah.
on the Upper East Side and in New York. And he does these little. His charity is basically helping advise from a legal standpoint small startups that he believes in. So my
Okay.
sister like approached him and he was game. He's like, I like this. It's ethical. It helped that his brother is a neurosurgeon, so he
Oh,
he gets
there
like
you
the
go.
physician aspect of it. Uh,
Yeah.
but I was like, I'll say his name. I don't think he'll mind. But I was like, Tim, I got to get rid of these 4 people. And we're locked into 3 to 6 month contracts and we're in like month one. And it's very clear to me that the marketing expert who's telling me I should spend a maximum of 20% on advertising is just wrong. Like I should be spending 50 to 80% on advertising, which turns out is the case from advisors who have done this successfully and have made $100+ million doing it in similar spaces. And he got us out of those contracts without ruining the relationship, without us having to pay anything. But that was very serendipitous. Like there was a while there where I was like, we're going to be paying tens of thousands of dollars for work that we don't need. So
Yeah, you're
I say
sweating a
that,
little bit.
yeah, I was sweating a lot. Kind of night sweats. There's concern for lupus there for a second, but at the end of the day, it worked out. But if I could go back, I'd avoid it altogether and I'd save a lot of money. Uh,
Right.
I think also surrounding yourself with people or surrounding yourself not with an echo chamber, but people who feel comfortable enough. And part of this is personality and leadership style, but part of it is the person as well, or equally, I think, getting people who will challenge you and say like, hey, from whatever perspective, financially, for example, like you're just wrong. And like, let me show you why you're wrong. Is extremely important because for a while there, it was all like, yes, 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 sir, kind of voices. When we got back or got down to the bare bones, now our now COO, who was a freelancer, like he will tell me, he's like, he'll say, reel it in. He'll be like, I'm gut checking you right now. You got to stop. Like, you got to stop doing this. You got to stop doing that.
Yep. No pun intended on the gut check, huh?
Yeah, yeah, no, all puns intended, actually.
All puns intended.
I
Right.
don't know if
That's
you've
that's
seen
the
the Key and Peele skit, Obama's anger translator.
oh, yes.
So he is both my anger and my doctor translator.
I love it. I love it.
But yeah, those are two big takeaways I think that were pain points for a while.
Yeah, and you even kind of transition into my next kind of like, segue into, choosing advisors, choosing mentors, choosing the kind of people you want around the table. I mean, that's important to not have an echo chamber just because if everyone says yes, then you're like, "Oh, this is easy," but then you come up to an issue and you're like, "Wait, what do we do?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know. What do you want to do?" Because they're
Absolutely.
thinking within the same lines. You need those different perspectives to be able to be, you know, really just to give good it's like I can't think of the example I was thinking of earlier, but, the best teams, like, I'd always think of sports analogies and whether that's a pro or a con, not everybody likes sports, but you don't have a full soccer team isn't just made of the fastest guys who are gonna all score goals. If you put 11 of those guys on the field, they're gonna let in more goals than they score. But you have to find a good balance. This guy fills this role better than this guy. This guy fills this role better than this guy. He can defend better than this guy can attack. Let's put it all together, and that's how you build a good team, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, as we kind of, come up to our closing, people who are listening, who are clinicians, entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, or just people trying to build something meaningful, what are some thoughts to kind of leave them with? You've given a lot already, but, I'm thinking from the physician space of how to be an ethical founder. What are some kind of like high level wisdom that you can leave with us?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've found really helpful in terms of frame of mind and kind of keeping sanity during periods of where it was touch and go was, you know, just like healthcare, this isn't a job per se. Like I did medicine because it was a calling, if that makes sense. Yeah. And this is medicine adjacent. And so for me, it was easy to make that transition, but this is also a calling. So I have to treat it that way with everything that comes with it, the ethics, the work ethic, kind of surrounding yourself with the right people, advisors, like you were talking about. I think that's one thing that is really important. And most successful founders that we hear about that have ghost written autobiographies or biographies written about them, you hear about work ethic and you hear about they stuck to their guns. There's one example that really comes to mind. Are you familiar with Jim Clark? He was the founder of Netscape. At that
Oh,
time, it was the biggest IPO in US history. He also developed the graphics card that like Star Wars, Jurassic Park, like all these like early CGI companies came out with. He's now like 80 something years old, like quiet billionaire, multi-billionaire, just sitting somewhere
just
in
hanging.
Texas, just hanging out, enjoying life. but he was interviewed by Michael Lewis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're probably familiar with him. It's called what is it called? The New Thing is the book, but it's basically about him following around Jim Clark for a year. And Jim makes this comment, and I can't say it verbatim, but the point is basically he says, if you if you don't cannibalize yourself, meaning as a company, somebody else will do it for you. So like going back to the drawing board every so often and being like, let's start from scratch and relook at everything and what can we do better at every kind of point. I really took that to heart and try to apply that, hopefully, you know, reproducibly to
Right.
my own venture. But
Right.
that makes sense to me that if you're not your worst critic without,
Without
getting down in the dumps and
getting
ruminate,
too down.
then someone else is going to be that critic and better you than an outside party.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd better, and you have to take that with a grain of salt, like you just said. You can't just like crush yourself into oblivion and say, you're actually not good enough. You can't do this. Like, you don't want to go that far and swing the pendulum, but you want to be able to say, hey, I need to take a step back and kind of get a really good view of this to break it down. Is this making sense?
Yeah, I guess the best way to put it, to your point, is actionable things, not stuff you just have to think about, but
Yeah.
things you can change.
Yeah. Things that are like tangible,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Rather than just the mentality, because the mentality shift is that's a whole different ball.
Yeah, that's not my specialty. You gotta see a psych for that.
But yeah, it's like, what can we do today? What's something we can change today? But so watch this space, I guess is the moral of our interview today. I think it's really cool, Bilal, to really kind of hear the inspiration behind kind of what brought this around. And I know that you're approaching this from the mentality and the standpoint of a physician. People don't understand as much. They always say, "Oh, med school is hard," but when you go through the training that you've been through, plus adding in and sprinkling in the NBA there. I mean, you've committed to it, right? It's
Yeah.
not part of your identity. It's not who you are, but it's definitely part of who you are. And now this new venture is exploring a new part of you as well. And I'm really encouraged to kind of hear where things continue to trend in that direction. Really excited because I mean, this is kind of novel, right? And so I'd really love to see a foothold gained
Yeah,
in the
hey, you and
supplement
me
space.
both. I have the same approach, and I'm just as excited and, yeah, a little nervous, but what comes with the territory.
But that's part of it. That's
Yeah.
part of it. But no, I really enjoyed having you today, man. I'm really excited to see what comes and really grateful that you spared the time for us.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and thanks for asking such, thoughtful questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was good
Well,
for
appreciate your time. You take it easy. We're going to highlight Lila Health and we'll see where things go. Maybe we'll check in a year and see an update interview.
absolutely. Yeah, I'd love it.
All right,
Alright,
Blau. You take it easy, man.
you too. Thanks, man.